Welcome, everybody, to the Six Steel City Rings live edition of our podcast. We are here today to talk about the Steelers' most recent preseason game against the Buffalo Bills. And I have with us, making the last second appearance, Ray Whiting, Zach Franciscus, and Bob Quinn. How's everybody doing today?
All right, how y'all doing?
Wonderful.
Good. So we'll talk quickly about a little bit of news. As it right now, it's Monday evening at 5 p.m. We welcome everybody that's joining us live. We would love to hear from you. So please drop any comments, questions, thoughts about things, topics we're talking about today into the chat. We'll see that right away, and we'll be able to respond back to you in real time. So we are going to talk about some of our concerns, but quick news update first. Some injuries to talk about. Nate Herbig, who was supposedly going to be our starting center, is out with a torn rotator cuff. It's hard to imagine he's going to make it back for the end of the season. Zach had a great analogy earlier. It's like a Rod Woodson injury. The Steelers are going to have to go deep into the postseason to see Herbig come back in. I think overall the biggest concern isn't having Herbig out at center because he wasn't performing all that well, it didn't seem like, but really as a depth piece on the offensive line is a bigger deal. We also had Peyton Wilson had a concussion, and Anthony Averett had a hamstring injury. The Steelers have signed some other minor players onto the squad. We'll see if any of those guys make the 53-man roster before we worry about talking about them. And then finally, Jaylen Warren left the Bills game with a hamstring injury. The Steelers lost that second preseason game to the Bills 9-3. I'm trying to tell myself not to panic. We talked about this on this show before, that we performed so well last year in preseason that everybody got all gassed up, and then we looked terrible when we got to the regular season. So I'm seriously trying to remind myself that this could just be the opposite. We're not showing all of our hands. Yeah, a little woosah. I don't think it's worth panicking about yet, but there are definitely some concerns. So Warren's injury concerns me because the Steelers have done so well with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren being that partner duo. I don't think that Jaylen Warren, I know other people feel this way, I don't think that he's good enough to be the sole wide receiver on a team. I think he performs best when he's partnered with somebody like Najee Harris. I think the Steelers have done a good job playing off the strengths of those two guys. I think Najee Harris has looked really good so far this season, or this preseason. I think Warren has too. But this leaves a question about what happens if he's out. Because if you have just Najee Harris in there playing, for one thing, it's a lot more mileage, on the vehicle, if he's playing every down all season long or however long it takes him to come back. The other thing that's concerning about a hamstring is that they can be a little bit tricky and they can re-aggravate very easily. So I'm curious to hear just how bad this injury is or when he starts to play again. Mike Tomlin called it, downplayed it, but Mike Tomlin downplays everything, so I don't know that that's exactly reassuring. And this morning, Mark Caboli was on the Fan, and he was talking about how the Steelers, with this new strength and conditioning staff they brought in all this fancy equipment. And one of the things they have is this machine they use to test the health of your hamstring. So they said the players kind of do like a plank at an angle on this machine, and it tenses their hamstrings, and it's able to digitally tell them exactly how strong a player's hamstrings are. So they've been using that to test them after practice on players like Jaylen Warren to get this like baseline reading for the health of their hamstring. So he seems to think that machine will help them determine, when he's actually healed and ready to come back, rather than saying he feels fine and goes back in. But it is concerning. We've got Cordarrelle Patterson, who is now reactivated. He could potentially come in. We've got a few other minor characters out there that could help support him. But it'll be interesting to see exactly how this plays out. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I heard on the Joe Starkey show this morning, and I was listening to it, and he went off about Jaylen Warren. He was really, really upset that he was on the field. You bench TJ because of the rain. You bench Cam because of the rain. At this point, does Micah ever play in the preseason? But you take your big three defensive stars out, and then here you put the guy you're relying on. I mean, if you don't follow Steelers football closely, folks, Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren are the back. They together. It's 51-49.
Yeah.
List your best pass protector, your best pass receiver, although Najee's not bad catching the ball.
Yeah.
In a preseason game that means absolutely nothing, and worst of all, on a terrible Russell Wilson checkdown. I agree with Starkey on this. I'm just really, really not happy with. I didn't like the check down, and I said it after the game, and I definitely hate the check down now that I know it got Warren hurt.
Yeah, but this is not something we can afford. We've had issues on the offensive line anyway, as we'll get into later. So we can't afford to lose either of our two-headed monster. Najee needs the spelling of Warren. Warren needs the strength of Najee. So without one or the other, and this is another injury that seemed like it could have been avoided. And I feel like if maybe there was more foresight, it could have, but that could just be just talking out of the side of my mouth for no reason.
Yeah.
You know, I ran a little bit, after the game on Saturday about Russell Wilson, and I want to say, thinking back, it's not all Russell Wilson's fault. Does he share some of the blame? Yes, he do. And
we can get to the quarterbacks in a little bit, but what do you think about? Well, to get to the quarterbacks in a little bit, but what do you think about Jaylen Warren himself, about that being out?
Jaylen Warren, I mean, I think right now, and it's hard to say because, again, it's easy to determine when you have a 4-game preseason schedule. Now you're at 3. So was it wrong to put him out there? Again, they should have done it like the quarterbacks. You play so many series in the beginning of the first quarter or the first half. You play so many series, and then you pull them. Now, unfortunately, Jaylen Warren injured his hamstring. So, and again, there's no word out on how severe the injury is. With that being said, so everything does fall on the shoulders.
It's at least 2 to 4 weeks, right?
Yeah.
They say 2 to 4 weeks. Yeah, they said some say 2 to 4 weeks. But when it comes to the hamstring,
if it's one practice, it's too much. If it's one practice, it's too much. I mean, it's just again, Mike Tomlin, Pat Meyer. And I'm going to start throwing Arthur Smith into this. I don't know what's going on with the offensive coaching staff. It's the blind leading the unconcerned at this point.
It does feel that way. I mean, we certainly hope it's not, but it does feel that way. But that kind of gives us a good segue into talking about some of your concerns, Bob. Do you want to roll into those?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, Broderick Jones.
His eyes got so big.
Yeah, Broderick Jones looked terrible. I mean, there's no other way to do it. He looked bad. Again, going back to Joe Starkey this morning, he was not reporting but hinting that Broderick's punch arm on the right side is injured, and he needs to be on the left side. I know there's concerns about whether he was even engaged because he is so sick of playing on the right side or out of position. He has also played more snaps at tackle in the preseason than any Steelers tackle. And Chris Muller this afternoon, I thought had a great rant about my friend, the he who shall not be named, who should not be on the left tackle. I felt like Chris Muller was watching the show. Appreciate you being on, buddy. I mean, he never wanted to see Dan Moore play left tackle again. I mean, at this point, there has got to be real concern that the Steelers are ruining Broderick Jones like they ruined Kevin Dotson by playing him out of position and then let him go for, a nice 3rd, 4th round draft pick, which we all thought was a steal. I'm sorry, a 5th round draft pick, which we all thought was a steal because we didn't think Kevin Dotson was any good. And the guy is a top 5 guard in the league now because he's playing the right position for the Rams.
I have a question.
This all started when Pat Meyer and Matt Canada were hired. Have we been good on the offensive line before that? No. But did we play guys out of position? I mean, it's almost like, what position do you play? Center? Good. Tight end is where you're going.
Bob, here's my question right here. And this
if you ask me about Dan Moore, I'm going to go ballistic.
No. Trust me, I'll say Dan Moore for later. This is a roundtable question for everybody.
Yeah, let's save him for next offseason when we talk about where he's playing.
Right. What we're going to get for him.
So The question is, I mean, some say that Mike Tomlin is lenient on the players when it comes to practice.
No, right? We're not going there with that same old excuse. How he holds players accountable. Bottom line, he's the head coach.
Bob, let me finish.
He's the head coach. He's got to have players playing in the
Bob,
right
let me
position.
finish.
He doesn't even understand where players
Bob,
play.
wait a minute.
Fire him.
Wait a minute, Bob. Some say that Tomlin is very lenient.
I don't want to hear some say. You've said this
Bob,
a million
let me
times,
finish,
Ray.
please.
No, I don't care. I don't care that Mike Tomlin lets players be accountable. You know what? Accountable got us 7 years in a row of playoff losses.
Okay, Bob, that's fine. But what I'm saying is, some say that Mike Tomlin is lenient on the players in comparison to Bill Cowher. Bill Cowher was tough. He was no nonsense. What I'm saying is Mike Tomlin being too tough on the players to where we have these injuries, these string of injuries on the offensive line? That's my question.
Can I just say, I hate comparisons. I hate it. I hate comparisons more than anything. I hate the comparison of somebody to Bill Cowher or somebody to Chuck Noll, because he's not that person. And none of us would be happy if Mike Tomlin was in pretending to be Bill Cowher. It just doesn't work that way. So do you know what I mean? So he's had his own success. I think he's been a successful coach in the league in his own right. Is it fair to have some concerns or questions about things he does? Absolutely. But I hate the comparison talk. I think it's pointless. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. There's no point in comparing the two of them to each other. They're very different kinds of coaches. Do you know what I mean? And so what difference does it make, even if it was the case?
But you know, it's going to come up. It's going to come up.
Not,
Ray. People that don't have anything better to talk about.
Well, Ray, the issue is, if you actually want to look at it technically, I would personally call it Mike Tomlin's least over aggressive season. That he likes the pads, he likes the impact, but he brought in a new strength and conditioning crew. They have a new strength and conditioning approach. This is the most flexible Mike Tomlin has ever been in a training camp, I believe. So even if there was that comparison, I personally haven't seen it. If you've seen it, Ray, but I haven't seen that particular comparison. And even if it was out there, so that I think it's a little bit of bad luck that, the year Mike Tomlin decides to possibly give up a little bit more control, let the players have a little bit more leeway as far as, the impact that they have on maybe it backfired a little bit. What I'm hoping is it doesn't cause Mike Tomlin to throw his hands in the air and say, well, that's the last time I try to be flexible.
Yeah.
I don't want, because I can see Mike Tomlin doing that. So that I don't like the comparison thing either, but in that, yeah.
Look at J.J. McCarthy. You know what I mean? Like, it happens everywhere. Players get injured in the preseason. Do you know what I mean? It happened to Corey Trice. It happened to Calvin Austin. I mean, it happens. Players get injured. And while it's unfortunate, it's a reality of playing football. It's a price you pay. It's a calculated risk when you put players out in the field in the preseason between trying to get this group to have time together and then also, protect your key guys like Jaylen Warren or Najee Harris or TJ Watt or whoever. But I guess my question is at what point do we start to worry about Pat Meyer? Is it fair to say that he's had, he's got a new group or, new guys in his group again this year? And so at what point do we start to worry about, or what point is enough time to give Pat Meyer to get his act together?
Yeah, I love that question.
The comment
by the way.
Seems to agree.
Yeah.
That why should he still have a job? Isn't he a Canada hire? This is a point. If you watch the podcast, I've been singing this since we started.
Mm-hmm.
You have the worst offensive coordinator in the history of the NFL. I think even Matt Patricia was better than him.
Yeah.
And then you retain Eddie Faulkner is a good guy. I mean, he seems to be a good running back coach. I think he was a little over his head last year with the offensive coordinator, although I would have liked to seen what his play calling looked like rather than going I'm sorry, I forget the quarterback coach's name because boy, is he great at his job. I don't think we should have retained any Canada assistants. I think this is evidence that Mike Tomlin told Arthur Smith, you were fired. I'm going to hire you. Yeah, you can run the offense, but you answer to me and you're keeping my guys. He only got to bring in basically one offensive assistant with Zach Azzani, the wide receiver coach, and a couple quality control guys. But you got to keep my line coach. You got to keep my running back coach. And yes, the running game looked better towards the end of last season. but it certainly wasn't like a top 5, top 10 Steeler type running attack. I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but I mean, you guys know my feeling on this. Pat Meyer should have been gone.
But he's not gone. So how long do we wait? Do you know what I mean? Not that anybody cares about our opinion, but I mean, at what point is it legitimately like hit the panic button on the season with this offensive line? Is there hope that he can get these guys together for the year still?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I think it depends on one thing. Normally, I am not with Bob on this particular thing. I'm a little more held back.
Yeah.
I am leaning more and more towards Bob on this. And what will fully turn me is if we trot out Dan Moore at the wrong side and Broderick Jones at the wrong side again. Even if it's preseason, I don't care. That should not happen again until Fatanu's healthy. You know, that would make me wonder if a job should be on the line. That would be a tone deaf blind move.
I've said it before and I say it again.
Hold on, right. We've got Patriots fans who've invaded the chat.
Yeah, we are going to bring the Patriots into this in a minute, John Markman. If you just give us a minute, we are going to bring the Patriots into this, whether you like it or not.
Yes, I agree. The Patriots will go 5-12.
The Patriots record.
100%. Yeah. I think 5 is generous, but.
And I mean, Josh Daniels. Oh my gosh, no. The only time he's as effective is when he was under Belichick with the Patriots. That's it. Everywhere else he's went, you know, he's sucked. So, Josh Daniels, no. No. I mean, now, if I had the choice between Josh Daniels and Matt Canada, if all else fails, give me Josh Daniels. But
I think they were ribbing us there a little bit.
That's
right?
a little facetious.
Yeah, but I mean, let's face it. Josh Daniels is a gifted offensive coordinator, and John is piping in that he has 6 rings. Yeah, he does. He's a great offensive coordinator. I would have no problem if Josh McDaniels, you know, somehow ended up as a Steelers assistant someday. No. I would have a problem with him being a head coach. He's obviously not a good head coach. He's not the first coordinator to be a bad coach.
Right.
I mean, he's a good offensive coordinator. I mean, do I want to fire Arthur Smith? No. I think Paul Zeiss had a great thing this morning that, you know, you can't have it both ways. You know, you either want a guy to not reveal his playbook. And, I mean, at this point, with the way our offense is kind of structured, we need a guy like Arthur Smith because 12 personnel, I mean, we might only have 3 or 4 weapons.
In my head, I'm saying, please let this be some sort of like crazy, like evil mastermind. What was the guy's name from the Powerpuff Girls? Like cooking in the chemistry lab, you know, is Arthur Smith in the offense cooking up some crazy plan that he's going to make us look like bumbling, incompetent fools. Do you know what I mean? In preseason, so everybody is lulled to sleep by us, and then we're going to come out and look crazy good, unexpected week 1 against the Falcons.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. The whole Josh McDaniels talk was actually a little interesting because I know Bill Belichick was on Ray's mind today, which is a little strange to say about a Steelers fan, but I know Ray wanted to touch really quick on why he was thinking about Bill Belichick. Ray, why were you thinking about Bill Belichick today?
Well, you know, Bill Belichick was on the Pat McAfee show today, and he said that the Steelers have bigger problems than Russell Wilson. And you look at the offensive line, you look at, again, Rousseau, who basically just took advantage of Broderick Jones on the right side. You look at, of course, Troy Fautonu, he's out. So with the injury. And then you have Herbig, who's out with a rotator cuff. So it's a sense of next man up. So do we have depth at offensive line?
No.
Good quality depth? No.
Not anymore. I mean, we did, theoretically, but Herbig's out. Troy Fautano's hurt, although he's the projected right tackle starter in game 1. They're not concerned about him being ready for week 1.
But
the
problem
is
what do we do? What do we do? I'm sorry. What did the Steelers do to rectify that? Again,
it's too late, Ray. It's too late. There's nothing to rectify. Either these guys start playing better, or it's going to be a long season. Yeah. I heard Starkey say today that the nightmare scenario is Troy Fautanu is the starting right tackle. Broderick Jones is not on the field. If that happens, I'm going to Pittsburgh. I'm going to stand outside of Mike Tomlin's office with a flag that says "Fire Tomlin" for the entire season.
Really quick, we got to come. How do you guys feel about this? You guys worried about Jaguars?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. I appreciate that Trevor Lawrence got paid, but this is not your Jalen Ramsey Jaguars anymore. With that particular nasty, I'm worried the Jaguars are somehow going to score 40 points and pick off Ben 4 times, and it's a little different. I think our defense can handle the Jaguars. So I appreciate the Gentry thinks that the Jaguars are going to be a problem, and hope I'm not proven wrong.
Yeah, I will say this: living in Jacksonville is going to be a good team this year. Trevor Lawrence, they've got a very interesting offense. I'm kind of torn on the defense a little bit, but I'm interested to see them, especially on the Steelers bye week.
I also always worry about anybody that we're supposed to be beaten. Do you know what I mean? That's supposed to be a gimme or an easy win or something like that. I think the Jaguars are a much better team, but I think fans will feel like this is a game that should be an easy win, and that always makes me a little nervous.
Okay, we're being asked for some direct honesty. So I think all of us can agree we generally believe the Steelers are going to be good. But this is fun because we haven't done any sort of prediction or all that. We're being put on the spot. If you had to right now say how far the Steelers were going to get into the season, how far would you say? And I'm going to say a loss in the first round again.
I think we're going to win in the first round and then lose in the second.
I think it depends who plays quarterback. And I mean, I'm kind of said a couple of weeks ago, I felt like 11-6 is good enough to win the AFC North, and we would do that. I've got to see something really different really fast from whoever's going to be the quarterback. And yes, we went 10-7 with Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, the hot dog vendor at quarterback. So I don't think we're going to fall very far from that. If we do fall, it could end up being the Tomlin thing where we're 9-8. Maybe we get the last wild card spot and get blown up again. If Justin Fields turns into a revelation, then okay, yeah, we can. I still think we can go 11-6 with the defense if the offense can show us a little something.
Bob, I will agree with you 1,000%. 11-6, they make the wild card, and they win their wild card game.
The reason I think that Hector's wrong about not making it close to the playoffs is because that's what Tomlin does best. So whether you love him or hate him, he wins these close games. He finds a way to pull it out. You know what I mean? When his back's against the wall, the Steelers manage to do well. And we saw that even with Kenny Pickett. We saw that with Mason Rudolph. I mean, we didn't just win because of Mason so amazing. Do you know what I mean? There's coaching that goes into it. So I that's every year. It wasn't luck. It happens all the time with the Steelers. Yep. I think it's pretty consistent. Anybody who's an honest fan is going to tell you that we've had lots of seasons where we shouldn't have been able to get as far as we did, but we did. And so I think that's the one thing that we always have going in our favor.
Yeah, John, I see John predicting 0-6 on our own division. Just so he knows, we haven't had a losing record in the division since before Mike Tomlin was hired. We've only had 7 losing seasons since 1970. Yeah. The Steelers are going to be in the mix. I mean, it'll be ugly. It won't be pretty. And, it may not look like we're going to win, but somehow we always figure out a way.
Before we touch on Charlotte's question really quick, I'll say it's going to be another season where when we get to the end, it's going to be a bunch of non-Steeler fans really upset that somehow the Steelers are still hanging on. I kind of feel that's going to be another thing where everyone's like, why are they still there? There's no, but I think this year it's going to be a little different. While people will still be kind of irritated that we're hanging on, there'll be more of a reason why we're there. They're like, hey, it's a defense. It's managing turnovers, whoever's playing. I think we're going to mitigate whatever damage we're seeing right now to some extent. But Ray, you were about to say something, so open up Charlotte's question there.
Yeah. So again, well, it's been answered. The first game, John, is the first game against the Atlanta Falcons. Charlotte, what game is everyone most concerned about for this season? The Chiefs game on the 25th seems to be what most fans say. I've addressed this before. During that stretch in the latter part of the regular season, that's going to be a deal breaker. One of the deal breakers, because again, 6 of the last 8 games are division games, and again, like Bob said,
Brutal.
we have a winning record in our division, so that's a good thing. So
and has had, even with Kenny Pickett, even with I mean, as bad as it's been a very long time since we were bad in the division. I think 3-3 is our worst, and that was I want to say the year Ben got hurt, 2019.
Yeah,
right. So I mean, so of course the Christmas Day game against the Chiefs, you know, at Acrisure, yes, it's going to be a good game, and again, it's going to be a big test. If the Steelers win, I mean, again, I think that'll be good motivation to finish out the regular season and go into the playoffs. So I feel good about that game, regardless.
Yeah, no,
does anybody remember how we all felt whenever we were going into the Chiefs game in the playoffs, that we were all excited that we were there, but we kind of knew what we were going into? That's what I don't want to happen this year. I don't want us to get to that point, even if we have a winning record, even that for me to go into that game knowing we still can't stack up to the Chiefs. I want to go into that game saying, you know what? It might be scrappy, it might be nasty, but we can actually do this. We can play the Chiefs and actually.
When you go in like with the bubble guts and you're like, I just hope we make it competitive. Like those are the worst. Like, that's how I thought about the Chiefs in the playoffs. Do you know what I mean? You don't. Who wants that? Like you want to at least, like you said, Zach, you want to at least seem like you have a real shot at it. I got to say, I don't know about game I'm most concerned about, but I am a little concerned about the Browns this year. Their defense is really, really solid. I'm not concerned that I think we'll lose both games to them, but I think that they're going to look much better this year. And I think a lot of it's going to hinge on what happens with Deshaun Watson and whether he really is Deshaun Watson from the Texans that looks much better, or is he just kind of like crummy Deshaun Watson we've had? If he's that guy, then I think we can all take a breath and relax a little bit. I think that if he's you know, looks sharp, if he's got it together this year, then I think that they could be really concerning. Their defense is really good.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, I'm mildly concerned about the opener at this point with the way the offense has looked, but I'm very concerned with the Denver game in week 2.
Yes.
If Russell Wilson is still a quarterback and we march into Denver and we get totally shut down, and Denver has a good defense. They have a very good defense. I don't know what their offense is going to look like. Certainly didn't look good with Russell Wilson and Jared Stidham. You know, hearing some stuff about Bo Nix, we'll see. I still don't believe in Bo Nix.
He got high praise in the last preseason game. Bo Nix did. So,
you know what? Dan Orlovsky set it to a 10 panic mode because of Russell Wilson this morning. I don't care whether August football, don't care. Let's see it when game 1 rolls around, how good it looks. They praised the crap out of Caleb Williams. He went 6 for 13. Whoop-de-doo.
I will say this: the Jaguars have scared me in the past, and I get, but I'm just being very, very honest about this. Is a different Jaguars team. This is a Jaguars team that relies on a lot of speed, a lot of offense. The other one would defensively scared me. Like their defense legitimately frightened me. And that I'll say this: even when we played against the Ravens, it was more of a respect kind of thing. I was scared when we played the Jaguars. That is not the case anymore. So even though the Jaguars might prove a problem,
we struggle with for some bizarre reason. You know what I mean? Like even when we should beat them,
like the Raiders,
we struggle with them like the Raiders. That's what I was going to say. It just doesn't make sense. but I feel that way every time we play. I'm like, oh man, we got the Jags again this year. Because what is it with them? I don't know. We have a voodoo doll or something.
I will say this: now that Ben's gone, at least we're beating the Raiders. I mean, Ben couldn't beat the Raiders to save his life.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, they had his number for some reason. I don't know why every team in the NFL didn't watch Raiders game tape and figure out whatever it was they were doing against him.
Cocky and scared. That's an interesting mix. I'm cocky and I'm scared.
That's how all Steelers fans feel too, like a little bit cocky and scared.
I think some of them away from being cocky now. I mean, Steelers fans. It's just a matter of concerned and scared at this point right now. Concerned and scared.
I don't remember the last time a Steelers game happened where I didn't feel heart palpitations from the beginning to the end.
Right. Yep. So before we go too far off the rails, I wanted to hear about what Zach's concern is for this upcoming season. We talked about the offensive line. We talked about Jaylen Warren's injury. And I'm curious what it is, Zach, that's keeping you up at night.
Well, it was Matt Cannon and Kenny Pickett. Now it's that the Steelers have backed themselves into a very unfortunate corner that we didn't need to be in right now. Because like Ray said earlier, it's no longer the era of the 4 preseason games. We had our dress rehearsal. That was the second one. That was supposed to be where we saw what we needed to out of our offense. And now this is not a usual third preseason game for the Steelers at all. And it's their own fault. Whether it's mismanagement, it's Russell Wilson's cap, it's Fatanu's injury, it's Roman Wilson on a jet sweep. It's thing after thing after thing that is building to the point where we have two options. We can either admit that there were shortcomings in how we approached it. We don't know enough about our offense, and we need to see Russell Wilson and Justin Fields on the field consistently in the third preseason game, which is normally not what we do. Or we're going to do what Tomlin normally does, say, no, nothing is wrong. We know what's going on and treat it like a third preseason game, which, by the way, Kyle Allen has the third quarterback slot wrapped up. Plumlee is playing for that athlete spot. We don't need to see more out of Allen. So if they do that, it just proves more tone deafness. So I'm getting so close to Bob level here. When I think of this, because we shouldn't be
go
here.
To the dark side, Zach.
Come to the dark side.
What makes me so upset about this is that there's no way to resolve this. Let's say that Russell Wilson and Justin Fields both look great in the preseason game. They're probably going to go against depth and bubble guys, like deep depth and bubble guys. No one's going to play their starters because we're playing ours. So it's not going to be a fair fight. Nothing is going to be resolved till week 1 of the regular season. So we're going and hoping this coaching staff that we have very little faith in, especially Pat Meyer, is suddenly going to say, by the way, all those errors and mistakes that you saw, they're not going to translate over. That's not realistic.
But do you think there's any legitimate chance that they're going to start Justin Fields? I feel like it's all a load of horse poo.
Yeah.
I mean, the plan is to start Russell Wilson. I think you cannot bench Russell Wilson and play Justin Fields first. He was their second choice. They didn't even want him. They only got him because Kenny Pickett threw a tantrum and left. So it was all along the plan was to have Russell Wilson. I think they feel like Russell's the more mature game manager. I think that they're going to allow him to start and he gets hurt, which I think is distinctly possible. I think he could find himself on the bench, and if Fields comes in and plays well, then I think Fields would get the opportunity to stay. But I think it would be pretty hard to start Fields and have Russ play backup, and then because you're going to bench Fields, and then now you're going to bring Russ in and expect him to not be bitter. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't. If Fields is the starter, I'm pretty sure they'll cut Wilson. Keeping him around as the backup. I've heard that point made several times. You cannot go from Fields to Wilson. You can go from Wilson to Fields.
Yes.
But that being said, and Zach and I talked about this the other night. Ty goes to the young guy. If Russell Wilson is not distinctly better than Justin Fields, then you got to have the legs. You got to have the dynamic stuff on the outside. Remember, the Steelers loved Fields coming out of the draft a couple of years ago. That's very big for Mike Tomlin. He falls in love with guys at the draft, and then when they become on a scrap heap, then he wants to go get them later on down the road. And frankly, I mean, if we're going to see the Russell Wilson who stood, yes, he got. I understand people got pushed in his face, but he stood there like a deer in the headlights for 4 seconds and then checked it down. He could have gone down the field. George Pickens might be the best combat catch guy in the NFL. Throw it up to him. See what happens. That's what we didn't like about Kenny. Mason Rudolph threw it up to him, and look what happened. All of a sudden, he exploded. It's not going to magically happen in the regular season.
Bob, what I didn't understand in the second half when Pittsburgh was down in the red zone and they went for it on 4th down, I thought that series in the red zone, I thought they were going to throw it up, a little fade route to George Pickens in the end zone. I thought maybe they were going to do that, and they didn't. And that's what I didn't understand about that series right there.
It's the second half of a preseason game, right? They're not going to put Pickens in for that.
But still, right. I mean, again, try to put points on the board. And
it's a preseason game, Ray. You don't put your starters in the second half of a preseason game.
Yet no one cares enough to do that. You're definitely not doing that, because then what if Pickens gets hurt? Then what? Then you're here screaming about what an idiot Mike Tomlin is for putting him in the game.
Well, I see your point.
If you put Pickens
Okay,
in the second half for
I mean, we opened the show with Bob ranting about Jalen Warren even playing. Do you know what I mean? Even playing a single down of football in that second game. So I have no idea how you would make any excuse for putting a starter in just to prove a point to score.
And God
okay.
Refresh
my memory. Refresh my memory. Was it the fourth quarter, right?
It was the second half, Ray. It doesn't matter.
Yep. So he should not be playing.
Well, look at Russell Wilson. He played some in the second half as well.
No, he didn't.
I see.
No, Russell Wilson did not play any of the second half.
He actually went out before the first half was even over. I think the last series was Justin Fields.
Yeah, Justin Fields
and I'll
scored
say
the
this,
points in the 2-minute drill.
Right.
If you're an NFL player that needs to win a preseason game, to take something away from the preseason game, you're looking at the wrong motivation. That's what I think a lot of young guys get really, really caught up in results and all that. No one is, especially Arthur Smith, is looking at the results. Yeah. He actually specifically said that in here and there, exactly. And even the results of an individual play, like Ray, I was talking about the little what is it, the pass to Cordell Patterson you really didn't like. Regardless of the result, regardless of anything like that, Arthur Smith is looking for different aspects than we are in that. So I'm just hoping that way back when, I remember the matter I felt about the Steelers, the better they ended up doing, and it just proved how little I understood about that. We've gotten away from that. I'd like to feel where we got back to that with Arthur Smith's hiring and with all of that. So I'm going to just choose until the next preseason game to believe. But if we come out and that offensive line looks the same that it did, I'm going to pull a Bob. And, anger from inside out, my head's going to go.
Well, bear in mind, one thing I want everybody to remember. If they play their starters, the Detroit Lions were just about as bad of a defense as the NFL has ever seen. And arguably, if they could play, just not even league middle defense, if they had just been bottom third defense, like 20 ranked defense, they probably beat San Francisco and go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
It wasn't just that Dan Campbell is an idiot. It was that, hey, your defense played terrible. You had a huge lead and you gave it up.
Yeah.
So I don't know how excited I'm going to be if our offense goes out and looks good against the Detroit Lions starters or second team defense. We better look good against that defense, and if we don't, if we get blown off the ball and pushed around, we
need to drill and footwork look better. Do you know what I mean? Some of those things, their hand placement better. Do you know what I mean? Punching better. You got to drill down and look at some of those, like the actual skills, and not this like overall picture of how far we just how far we move the ball or if we score or not. Well, that's obviously the end result that's desired. I think we've got to look at some of the actual skills, because that's where things to me were really falling apart in this second game.
That's true. Well, if you guys had to kind of wrap this all up with one or two sentences, what would it be? Because mine would be very, very simple. Prove me wrong.
Yeah.
That's it. Please prove me wrong. I'm very concerned right now and I want to be proved wrong. So that's how I would sum it up.
Yeah.
You know that meme where the house is on fire behind the person and they're like, it's fine. That's my current state of mind right now. I am choosing to believe. You all know that I am the most optimistic fan in the world. Everybody knows that about me. But on top of my normal optimism, I'm usually able to be pretty realistic about things. And I'm just going to choose to believe that they know what they're doing and it's going to be okay when we get to the regular season. Do you know what I mean? I believe this is part of the plan. I don't, as a fan, I don't have a choice other than to drink the Kool-Aid and go along with it. Otherwise, I'll have Bob's high blood pressure problem.
Yeah. Well, I don't have high blood pressure just when I watch the Steelers. But that being said, I mean, we could be down 21-3 with 8 seconds remaining, and I'm figuring out how many onside kicks we need to recover in 8 seconds to come back. I'll never give up on them. But at the same time, I mean, we had kind of mentioned earlier about this Pat Meyer thing, and Leanna's like, how long do you wait? Pat Meyer just got an extension. He signed through the same tenure as Mike Tomlin. And knowing Art Rooney and knowing the Steelers, that means he's got 3 years more of this.
Yeah.
Although I will say this, and I heard this point several times today, Omar Khan in the offseason said, Broderick is our left tackle. We didn't draft him to be a right tackle. So bottom line is, at some point, yeah, maybe Art Rooney is deciding on Mike Tomlin's future, but Omar Khan, I think is about to lose patience if they blow this season because they played the offensive line everywhere but where they should be.
I would expect Omar to be a little bit tougher on some of those positional coaches and coordinators.
Yeah.
Time will tell with Omar. Again, I mean, I love what he's done with the wheeling and dealing in the offseason. And again, and the jury's still out on this IU possible trade, but I'm not going into that. I'm not going to do it. I'm not. I'm leaving it alone.
Well, plenty of time for that on Thursday. When who knows, we might have an Ayuk.
Maybe something
right now, we do need him.
If we're betting the over/under on whether Ayuk is going to be a Steeler by Thursday, I'm going with the under. I think it'll still be. We don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
All
right. So, thanks everybody for joining. This was great.
100%. That was amazing.
Yeah. Hold on for a second. Hey, I want to give a shout out to Rich Lindsay. He's one of the news viewers on the show here. I'm going to give a shout out to John Markham, DTWD Gentry, and who else I see here? I have John Markham and
it was a great chat.
Hector Ramirez.
And Charlotte.
And also, let me scroll up here. Two awesome angels. Hey, thank you all for tuning in. Again,
don't forget about DTWD Gentry.
I did. I said
that was a second.
Okay.
Even if you're Patriots fans, even if you're Jags fans, we're all football fans, and the competitive conversation is fun. So we really do appreciate everybody chiming in. It would help us a lot if you would like the podcast, if you would subscribe to it, you would share it out on social media. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you think about something that Bob said that didn't make any sense and you want to give us some pushback, you've got all of our social media contact information on here as well as the show. We'd love to hear from you. We'll bring that back up Thursday when we meet again.
Absolutely. And oh, by the way, don't forget Steel City Rings TikTok. We put a video out almost every day, shorter versions of whatever's going on that day. If you're not subscribe, like, share on that as well.
Yep.
Are we seeing?
I'm just. Wait, is this a general comment? Like, is it like, are you asking the group? Because you can date, but you have to date all four of us at the same time. That's the only one. It's a group.
That's a handful.
Whoa. Hey, that's a little personal now, but anyway.
I appreciate the comments. Very important, though. I don't know who that Zach is because I don't have an H in my name. And I don't trust Zach to use their name because their bodies. So, well, thank you guys so much for showing up.
Guys, take care. Be safe.